Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Gouia. As you already know, I have 3 different nationalities. I was born in France, raised in Paris, so I'm French. My father is Tunisian and my mother is from Costa Rica, Central America. So you can easily guess why I'm so passionate about this topic on origins. But what I've been even more passionate about while I was growing up was to resolve this eternal internal debate. Feeling very cosmopolitan, very international, certainly because of the diversity of my own origins, but also understanding the claims that cultural origins matter a lot in our identity. That actually the people that sometimes are called patriotic, nationalists, in a very pejorative way, negative way, I could understand them as well. So I grew up portraying myself as the classic citizen of the world, and at the same time understanding why for some people it was so important to keep alive their traditions and their culture. But I think I've come up to a solution to that debate, and that's what I want to argue with you today, actually, is that there is no debate. There is no contradiction. There is no contradiction between feeling very patriotic and at the same time understanding that we are all part of a broader community made of human beings that are all entitled to human rights. There is nothing contradictory between feeling that your origins matter and at the same time that you can enrich your own identity by traveling, living abroad, meeting new people, experiencing new cultures. There is nothing contradictory between being part of a community and enjoying being part of this community and at the same time having a very complex and particular identity. But before explaining a bit more on why is it so important to say that today, I want to first define what I mean by origins. I'm going to define origins in 2 different ways. Territorially first, this is where you were born or where you grew up. So it could be a region, a village, a country. And then there's socially origins. Your family, your economic, social background, your friends sometimes, the people you grew up with. And all those people that were with you while you were growing up. So there's social origins and there are territorial origins. But in this talk, I will probably focus a bit more on country origins and on cultural origins as social origins, because I believe most of our problems in our modern world revolve around those 2 notions. So why is it so important to argue there is no contradiction between the 2 feelings I had? Well, I believe first that I kind of want reconciliation between 2 groups that I'm definitely going to caricature for the purpose of this talk. The cosmopolitans and the nationalists. The nationalists are the ones that see the importance of our cultural origins, see the importance of our traditions and how we've been raised, where we've been raised, but are afraid of globalization. The cosmopolitans, on the other side, are the ones that don't feel that cultural origins determine much. They focus much more on the individual, but they're sometimes a bit blind to how difficult it is to peacefully coexist with people that have different cultural origins and come from different places. I believe one way to reconcile those 2 groups of people, is to make a very important distinction between origins and identity. But before saying that a bit more on that, I want to say first why I want to reconcile them a lot. And it is because I don't want xenophobia from the nationalist ones, and I don't want blindness on the cosmopolitan side. So why the distinction between origins and identity is important to reconcile those 2 groups of people? Well, because actually, we can link those 2 concepts of origins and identity to 2 basic feelings we all have. We want to be part of the group, and we want to be different. We want to be so much a member of any group, community, feel part of something. At the same time, we want to be unique. We want to be different. We want to be, oh, I'm this person that no one is. And I think everyone has those 2 basic fundamental human feelings. And actually, origins and identity is a bit the same. Origins is about the fixed reality you've been in your early life. You can't change it, it's fixed. Identity, on the other hand, is very much about the evolution of your own personality. So it's very much about perpetual change. Origins is about your first sentiment of belonging to a certain family, country, etc. Identity, on the other side, is very much about being independent from anyone else, being very different. So you can see that actually origins relate much more to this feeling of sociability, of being part of the group, and identity is much more about being different, about being independent from everyone, about the fact that you're unique. I'll take a bit my own example to define these two concepts, to make it a bit more clear. So if I think about my own origins, territorially, I grew up in France, and that definitely influenced me a lot. It's the first time that I understood how society was working. I could definitely notice and witness the norms of my society, the values of French society. I internalized the culture. My very first thoughts and ideas were framed thanks to the French language. My social origins, my father being Tunisian, my mom being Costa Rican, they pass on to me as well their cultural origins, their vision of the world, their music they listen to, their ideas, their values, all this make up my origin. But if I think about my own identity, it's so different, it's very much more complex. Yes, indeed, my origins do have an importance on who I am. Yeah, I do dress in a very Parisian trends sometimes. Yes, I do love Arabic songs. Yeah, I do speak in Spanish when I'm drunk. Yet I have all those feelings and influences coming from my origins. But that's not just who I am. I can't restrict myself to that. I'm definitely also a woman. I'm talkative, I'm perfectionist. I'm a very stressed person in my school, my career, etc. There's many other things that make up my own personality. I love politics, I love history, things like that make up myself. But today might change in a few days later and like in some years after as well. But also, not only the cultures of my origins influence me. The other cultures I'm going to experience later also influence me a lot. For example, it's been 2 years now that I've been studying at Cambridge, and I'm still very much feeling the influence of British culture. I do have tea very much at 4 every time with my friends. I say a lot lovely. I try to copy Emma Watson's accent quite a lot. There's definitely a lot of influence coming from the British culture. So myself can't be restricted to only my origins. So why is that so important to reconcile the cosmopolitans and the nationalists? Because what I would say to the cosmopolitans is, don't be blind to the influence of our origins in our identity. Don't be blind because sometimes, especially when you feel threatened or discriminated against, those origins take up a very important place in your own identity. When I'm in France, I sometimes feel very much more Tunisian. Why? Because sometimes in some discussions or listening to the news, there is sometimes some confusion between certain terms like Muslims, North Africans, immigrants, refugees, that they all take as synonyms, and I feel a bit insulted by that. But why do I feel insulted? Why do I feel threatened? Why do I feel more Tunisian? Why do I have this tribal sense of belonging to that community? I haven't been in Tunisia for a while. My Arabic is not well. And yeah, I'm not Muslim neither. Why do I feel so hurt by those words? Because I do feel threatened in my own origins. When I'm in England, I don't feel rejected as French, but I do feel the influence of my French culture. It's actually the first time I realized how much France had influenced me in my way of studying, in my way of experiencing friendships, all of those. So origins are important. We can't say origins are not important. They are important in our lives. And we should understand that because people are moving from a country to another, and because of globalization, we will be surrounded by people coming from different origins. And we have to respect that sometimes they might be a bit threatened because of the differences. And if we discriminate them, they'll definitely feel very insulted. And their origins will take so much more importance in their identity. The nationalists, listening to everything I've just said, would be, hold on, actually, well, we agree with you. We definitely feel very threatened by immigrants coming to our countries. I disagree with that. Because, yeah, they feel threatened, but not in their origins. They feel threatened in the idea of their collective identity. And that's where the distinction, again, between origins and identity is important. They feel threatened because what they do to make up this collective identity is they take characteristics, symbols that we all have from our origins, and they believe that everyone has the same characteristics or would pick the same symbols. But that's not true. Example again. In France, they talk a lot about Jeanne d'Arc, the nationalists. I don't have anything to do with her. I literally don't feel anything when someone talks to me about Jeanne d'Arc. I think that France is much more about Voltaire. Dark humor, fighting for a cause all the time, loving debates. But that's also my only way of perceiving this. Is my personal way of perceiving my own origins. Everyone perceives their origins in very different ways. And this is very much the problem with nationalists. What they feel threatened is not their origins, it's the collective identity. And this collective identity doesn't exist. There is no identity for every one of us. We're all so different. Yes, we all are influenced by our origins. And yes, definitely the cosmopolitans should be much more aware of how much our origins make up things in our identity, how sometimes we feel passionate about them. But they don't make our identity. We don't restrict ourselves to just that. No one should tell you who you should be because of where you come from, because of which family you grew up in, or because of you come from this social economic background. Identity is absolutely personal. It's the particular association of characteristics to make you yourself. So there we see that actually if cosmopolitans were understanding very much this distinction, and if nationalists were understanding this distinction as well between origins and identity, well, they could definitely reconcile on many issues. So it's true, we can be both cosmopolitans and hold origins as important. It's not contradictory. We only have to acknowledge that we definitely have both a very tribal sense of wanting to be part of the group and sometimes copy the people from the group, and that we all want to be very different as well. And we should live with both of those feelings. They're not bad, they're great feelings, but to the extent of not hurting others, whoever they are and wherever they come from. Thank you.